All right, let's just jump right into it. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking what is honestly one of the most wonderfully chaotic and wildly distracted journeys ever put to paper. You know, we usually think of the classic hero's journey as this straight line, right? There's a calling, a grand quest, a climax, and then the triumphant return. But what happens when your hero has the attention span of a goldfish? What happens when an epic quest gets hilariously, and I mean endlessly, sidetracked? Well, today we're looking at a brilliant piece of poetry that maps out exactly that. It is an absolute masterclass in rhythm, rhyme, and getting completely, hopelessly lost along the way. So to set the stage here, I want you to picture a highly relatable scenario. We've all been there, right? Have you ever walked into a room with a very specific purpose in mind? Maybe you went to the kitchen for a glass of water, and then 20 minutes later you find yourself organizing your spice rack, watering a fern, and totally forgetting why you even stood up in the first place? Well, imagine that everyday phenomenon, but blown up to epic, mythical proportions. Imagine going to the store for milk and somehow returning with a crystal chest plate, a sword made of solid emerald, and the emotional baggage of a tragic romance with a butterfly. That extreme, absurd escalation is the beating heart of the story we're exploring today.
Okay, before we get too far, we absolutely have to talk about the title of our source material because it frames this entire explainer. The word is errantry. By definition, errantry is traveling in search of adventure. It's wandering. It's closely related to the idea of a knight-errant, a roaming figure out looking to prove their chivalry. But here, in the context of this specific tale, errantry isn't noble. It's not focused at all. It is literal, endless, purposeless wandering. Our protagonist is completely consumed by his own errantry. He's basically a victim of his own whims. And as we dig into the text, you're going to see how this single word perfectly captures the chaotic snowball effect of his journey. So let's get into it and see how our hero makes his grand preparations.
Section 1. The messenger sets sail, a gilded gondola, and a crucial errand.
Right off the bat, the poem hits us with this incredible bouncy cadence. There was a merry passenger, a messenger, a mariner. The rhythm here is just so energetic, it pushes us forward like a fast-flowing river. And we learn instantly that this character has a job. He is a messenger. He has an errand. And to get this errand done, he decides to build a boat. But of course, not just any boat. He builds a gilded gondola to wander in. Right away, warning bells should be going off. We're seeing the first signs of distraction. I mean, he's a messenger, but he's already planning to wander. And his travel provisions? A load of yellow oranges and porridge.
I mean, just think about the sheer extravagance of his preparations here. He doesn't just build a functional boat and hit the road, he basically turns it into a luxury cruise. The text says, he perfumed her with marjoram and cardamom and lavender. Notice the brilliant internal rhymes there. Marjoram, cardamom. The author is really playing with language, giving the story this fantastic musical momentum. But functionally, it's showing us that our messenger is spending way too much time making things pretty rather than, actually delivering his message.
And the scale of this initial journey, it's massive. He literally calls on the winds of Argosies, which are these great merchant ships, to carry him. He crosses 17 rivers. 17! All that just to land all in loneliness on a pebble-strewn shore where the river Darylin goes merrily forever on. He has traveled an immense distance, through meadowlands and dreary shadowland, roving a weary way. So he is perfectly set up for an epic adventure. And what does he do next? He completely abandons the mission. Which brings us to Section 2. Detour 1. A wasted web of romance. Or the butterfly heartbreak. So he's sitting alone, singing a melody, his errantry a tarrying, when he gets entirely, hopelessly derailed by an insect. Let's walk through this. Step 1. He sees a pretty butterfly flutter by, and literally begs her to marry him. Step 2. The butterfly, quite naturally, scorns him. She scoffs at him and laughs at him, unpitying. It is a brutal, humiliating rejection. By a bug. Now, step 3. Instead of just brushing it off and getting back to his actual job as a messenger, he throws a massive fit of rejection. He decides to dedicate an absurd amount of time to over-the-top retaliation and crafting. And this is where the comedic contrast of the whole poem absolutely shines. To win back this butterfly, the text tells us, so long he studied wizardry and sigildry and smithing. Say those words out loud, wizardry, sigildry, smithing. They carry this heavy, ancient, epic weight of high fantasy, don't they? You expect someone studying these ancient arts to be forging some legendary weapon to defeat a dark lord. But our guy, he's studying dark magic and heavy metal work to impress a tiny winged insect that already laughed in his face.
It is just a fantastic juxtaposition of scale. Just think about the ridiculous inventory of this bizarre bridal trap he builds. It is a catalog of extreme microscopic obsession. He weaves a tissue airy thin to snare her. To chase her, he crafts himself wings out of beetle leather and swallow hair. When he finally catches her in bewilderment, he uses spider thread filaments to hold her. He builds her soft pavilions out of lilies, beds of thistledown, and dresses her in silken webs of filmy white and silver light. The sheer detail here is mesmerizing. It really highlights the absurd scale of this fantasy world. He is quite literally constructing miniature architecture out of flower petals instead of delivering his message.
But, shocker, it ends in tragedy. He threads gems into necklaces for her, but recklessly she squanders them. They fall to bitter quarreling. So, sorrowing, our hero wanders on. He leaves her withering, and shivering, he flees away on swallowing into the windy weather. This entire detour was a complete, dramatic waste of time. He's heartbroken, sure, but at least now he can finally get back to his errand, right? Wrong. Instead, he decides that if romance isn't for him, he must become a warrior.
Section 3. Detour 2. Forging the fairy armor, complete with an RPG-style inventory.
Let's trace his steps for a second because, wow, he gets so insanely lost. He leaves the dreary Shadowland and passes through archipelagos full of yellow marigolds, silver fountains, and mountains of fairy gold. Then he just takes to roaming over these beautifully named mythical realms, Belmarie, and Thelemy, and Fantasy. He is a herring beyond the sea. The sheer geographical scale of the world he's traversing makes you realize just how incredibly far off track this poor guy actually is.
And this wandering brings us to this crazy gear upgrade. This isn't just standard iron and steel. He crafts a shield and a morion, which is a type of helmet, by the way, out of coral and ivory. He makes a sword out of solid emerald. His habergeon, his chainmail armor, is made of pure crystal. His scabbard is carved from chalcedony. He's got an ebony spear tipped with silver and javelins made of malachite and stalactite. It's an absurdly extravagant, shiny panoply. He is decked out in the densest, most precious materials imaginable. So now, fully geared up like a final boss in a video game, he takes to war.
Which leads us to Section 4, Detour 3, the Great Insect War and Epic Battles of Microscale.
So, you have to ask, who exactly does this heavily armored, crystal-wearing warrior fight? At first, the text gives us some traditional epic foes. He battles the elven knights of Aerie and Fairy and clashes with golden-haired, shining-eyed paladins. But then, the scale zooms right back down in a wildly comedic way. He brandishes his malachite javelins and fights the dragonflies of paradise. And then, he battles the Dumbledores, the Hummerhorns, and the honeybees. All this incredible, mythic preparation, all these heavy gemstone weapons, just to wage a terrible rivalry against bees and hummingbugs.
And the grand ultimate prize for all this bloodshed and vanquishing? The golden honeycomb. He wins a piece of honeycomb. Having conquered the bees and secured his sticky prize, he finally calls an end to his warring days. He runs home on sunny seas, sailing in a ship made of leaves and gossamer, with a blossom for a canopy. He sets, he sings, and he furbishes and burnishes up his incredible panoply of armor. Which brings us to the climax, and honestly, the absolute punchline of this entire poem.
Section 5. The punchline. The forgotten errand, and starting all over again.
The comedic tension building up here is just perfect. He tarries in lonely little isles, finding nothing but blowing grass. Finally, step 1. He sails home. Step 2. He sits around polishing his fancy armor, immensely proud of his honeycomb. And then, step 3. It finally hits him. As the text says, to memory his message came, and errand too. The devastating truth lands. He remembers why he got in that gilded gondola in the very first place.
If you want to perfectly sum up the concept of errantry, just think about this contrast. On the one hand, his original mission, deliver a simple message. On the other hand, what he actually did, stalked a butterfly, built miniature lily beds, crafted crystal armor, and fought a massive war against honeybees. He got so incredibly caught up in the side quests that he completely abandoned the main storyline.
The text actually spells it right out for us. In daring do and glamour, he had forgot them, journeying and turning, a wanderer. All that glamour, the daring do, the grand romantic gestures, the epic battles, these weren't triumphs. They were literally the very things that made him a terrible messenger. His thirst for adventure totally erased his actual purpose.
And this brilliantly illustrates the tragic, endless loop of his existence. Because he blew it, because he forgot the message and didn't deliver it, what happens next? So now he must depart again and start again his gondola. He's trapped. He is forever still a messenger, a passenger, a terrier. He's doomed to be a roving as a feather does, a weather-driven mariner. He has to go back, get the message, and start the exact same journey all over again, completely at the mercy of the wind and his own easily distracted mind.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought. While this poem is a whimsical, genuinely funny tale of a tiny warrior fighting bees, it perfectly captures the deeply human experience of getting brilliantly, hopelessly sidetracked. How often do we set out with a crystal-clear purpose, only to get caught up in the daring-do and glamoury of everyday distractions? So I have to ask, in the grand scheme of things, are we all just wandering messengers who forgot our errand, destined to keep starting our gondolas all over again? Think about that the next time you go to the kitchen for water and end up repotting a plant. Thanks so much for joining me, and hey, keep your eyes on the mission.